Thank you and welcome to today's special career track presentation, 60 Minutes of Outlook Secrets. Today's presentation is being recorded. Nothing in today's presentation should be construed as legal advice. If you have a specific question of a legal nature, please consult your attorney. My name is Michael Chabelli and I'll be your presenter today. As an information technology professional, I have spent close to 20 years helping businesses to design and implement different forms of technology. I have worked with a broad array of industries including aviation, insurance, not-for-profit, law, and many others. I have also spoken on many technical and managerial topics. Let's go ahead and get started. In today's agenda, we are going to look at 5 different modules. In the first module, we're going to look at the 4 Ds of organization. Those 4 Ds are do it, dump it, defer it, and delegate it. So we're going to look at how we organize ourselves, how we go through the concept of touch it once and make the decision, do we do it, dump it, defer it, or delegate it. And then we're going to look at how those different options can be achieved in Outlook. How can Outlook help us get things done or get rid of things, or defer them, or delegate them out. In Module 2, we're going to take a look at email. And we know how important email is these days. We also know how many emails we get. And staying on top of that and keeping email organized is a challenge. And we're going to show you tips and tricks and different ways that you can utilize features inside of Outlook to help you manage your email. And in Module 3, we're going to take a look at the calendar, the tasks, and the contacts. What are the features in there that can help you understand and organize yourself better? And then in Module 4, we're going to take a look at finding stuff. Because eventually, once you've used Outlook for a little while, you're going to get a lot of emails, you're going to get a lot of calendar appointments, tasks, and contacts. And at some point, you're going to need to go through all of that and find a needle in a haystack. And we will show you different things to do both proactively and after the fact to go ahead and find things. And finally, in our 5th module, we're going to look at automation. How can we utilize quick steps? How can we utilize rules to help us not only get organized, but do less work getting organized? So let's go ahead and get started with our webinar and Module 1. Module 1. The 4 Ds of organization. Now, Outlook is central to many of us during our work days. There's a constant flow of emails, tracking our appointments. And keep in mind, they're not just our appointments anymore. It used to be I put in all my appointments. Now I get invited to meetings, and I invite other people to meetings. So there's keeping track of all of that. For some of us, we use the task feature in Outlook. So there's a tracking of our tasks and our to-dos. And then, of course, there's our address book, or, as they call it now, our contacts. Now, keeping all of this organized has a major impact on our days. It has a major impact on our productivity every day. And that's why we're going to start our discussion today with the 4 Ds of organization. So as we work through Outlook, you will see that we will look at these 4 Ds, especially in email, to ask ourselves the questions: do I do it? Do I dump it? Do I defer it? Or do I delegate it? It's the cornerstone of getting organized. And will drive our feature discovery today as we go through the secrets of Outlook. Now let's start off by making sure that we all understand the 4 Ds. The first one is do it. Seems like an easy one. It kind of goes along with that slogan from Nike, just do it. That's not necessarily true. We don't want to just, every email that comes in, we don't want to just action it immediately. What we need to do is take a look at that email, and we need to ask ourselves the question, is this going to take me a long time to do? Is this something I can get done in a short period of time, in 2 to 5 minutes? Depending on your work and the way and the job that you do, maybe it's a little longer. Maybe you could say, if it takes me 2 to 5 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes, then maybe I want to do it right away. Not maybe, I should do it right away. Just get it over with. So I read the email, and I got to ask myself, do I do it right away? And the general rule is if it's within 2 to 5 minutes or 5 to 10 minutes, again, depending on your job, you should just go ahead and do it. Get it done. Get it off your plate. If you're not going to do it, well, then we move on to the next question. Do I dump it? Now, dump it is not throwing it away. Dump it means, do I get rid of it in some way, shape, or form? One of those ways would be to delete it, get rid of it, throw it away. But we can't always just get rid of it. If it's not something we need to action, it still might be something we need to reference. It still might be something that we need to hold on to. So if I can't delete it, because I do need to reference it at some point, then I need to file it. So dump it means both. It means to get rid of it, to throw it away. It also means let's put it away. Let's put it away so I have it as a reference for later. So when we talk about filing it away, dumping it into a folder, we need to be very careful, because I have seen it and I have done it myself, where I will create this great folder structure and I will file emails away in these folders, and I will sometimes forget which folder I created for which types of emails, and I actually will get to the point where I will have multiple folders holding the same type of email, whether it be emails for the same vendor, the same project. So you got to be very careful. You need to focus on how am I creating my folder structure so that it makes sense, not just today, but it will make sense 3 days from now, 3 weeks from now, and 3 months from now. One of the things I strongly suggest when you get here is to try and create your email file folder structure the same as you would create your file folder structure, your physical file folder structure. So your file cabinets will have the same structure, same organizational logic as your email file folder structure. Especially if you run a department, if you're the head of a department, you should try to get your entire staff to use a similar logic when filing their stuff away. Not only does it keep everybody consistent, not only does it help them decide how to set up their structures so that it's logical, but it also is a situation where if they are out one day and you need to find something, you understand how they filed things, both paper and email. The next one is to defer it. So I've decided I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to dump it because it is still something I need to action. So I'm going to decide to defer it. And again, I decide to defer it when it's something that I can't take care of in a 2 to 5 minute, 5 to 10 minute time span. It's going to take me longer to do that, and I want to do that either later in the day, later in the week, or later in the month, whatever it is. But the bottom line is I do need to go ahead and defer it. And when I make the decision to defer it, I have to be very careful because I need to track the fact that I still need to do it. And we have a couple of different ways in Outlook that we are going to go into in a lot more detail a little bit later. We can use things like the follow-up, where I just flag an email for follow-up. I can specify I want to follow up today, tomorrow, next week, next month, or I can set a custom date to follow up on that email. So the email itself stays as just an email, but I've put a little flag on it to say, hey, you know what? Remind me on this date that I need to follow up on this email. The other thing I can do with it is I can actually take this email and create a task from it. And I promise I'm going to show you how to do all of this when we get into the different sections. But I can take that email and I can create a task from it. So now I have the email and I can file it away or throw it away. It doesn't really matter because once I create a task, a copy of that email goes into the task. And now it's just a task item on my to-do list. And the last thing I could do with deferring it is I can do the exact same thing as a task except create a calendar appointment. I can say, you know what, I'm going to work on this tomorrow at 3 p.m. and I can schedule time to work on it. And that is probably one of the best ways to do it. Edit that out. So again, if I decide to defer it, I can set a follow-up, I can create a task from it, or I can create a calendar item for it. And the last one is to delegate it. And delegation is not something that is always that easy for people to pick up on. But if you are a manager or a supervisor, or sometimes even just a parent, and you need to give it to somebody else to take care of, we can use Outlook to do that. And we can do it as simply as just taking that email and forwarding it on to somebody else. Say, here's what's going on, you take care of it. The other option is to create a task from it. I'm going to show you how to take that task, how to take that email, create a task, and then assign somebody to it. So I'm delegating it to somebody, and when I send them that task, then when they update that task, they can just send me a report to tell me what's going on with it. So I have linkage to that task so that I can have some tracking of what's going on with that task. So again, if I decide to delegate it, I can forward the email out, I can create a task from it and assign it to them. The other thing too is I could also schedule it using an email calendar item and invite that person to it. So those are the 4 Ds of organization. Do it, dump it, or defer it, or delegate it. So each item that we go through, primarily in the email section, because everything else sort of drives off the email section, we're going to ask for every email. We're going to go with the concept of touch it once. Only touch it once. And when you do touch it, you decide, do I do it? Do I dump it? Do I defer it to later, take care of it at another time? Or do I delegate it to somebody else? So every time you touch an email, you should go through this process so that you are not touching that email again. Okay, so that is the overall concept that we're going to be working with. Let's move on to the next module. Module 2, email. So let's take a look at working with our email. And I got to be honest with you, I am done with PowerPoint for a while. We are going to stay in and focus on doing things inside of Outlook. So the first thing I want to take a look at with email is our views. Now, keep in mind, we're going to talk about email, calendaring, tasks, contacts. We're going to talk about all of it. We're also going to talk about automation. The first thing I want to make sure that we're clear on is that the screen you see initially is not the screen you have to work with. We have different options when it comes to our views. So if that's the first place I want to look at is make sure that you pick a view that works for you. And you'll see here, this is my initial Outlook screen with my email being shown. And I've got my folders on the left. I've got my emails in the middle here. And then on the right, I have my reading pane. Now let's start off by going to our menu option here, and we're going to click on our View tab right there. And when we click on our View tab, we get a number of different options in our ribbon. And the first one that I want to talk about is one that's very common, which is the navigation pane layout. You see you have the ability for the navigation pane, where is it, which is the item that was all the way on the left on my screen, the reading pane, which is all the way on the right, and then my to-do bar, which I don't have turned on. But let's take a look at those. And you'll see with my navigation pane, it gives me, do I want it normal? If I click on minimize, you see it shrinks out, it goes away over here, and then I have to click on this arrow here to open it, and then I can close it back down. And then I can actually just turn it off completely. There's no navigation. So my folders, my different items, I don't have that navigation. I don't have that navigation on the left. Okay. Personally, I like to leave it on normal. I like my folders to the left. And you'll see why later when I start talking about organizing and moving things. I prefer to be able to grab an email like this, drag it, highlight the folder, release, and file it away, and I'm done. So I like having that on the side there. So I click here too. You see I have favorites turned on, and favorites, you'll see, is right up here. I have none. So the question is, how do I add one to it? All I need to do is simply grab one of these folders, drag it up, put it on top of the favorites, and I release. And now in my favorites, you'll see that folder 1-Michael is there. And it's still down here as well. That's just my favorite. It's a quick way to get to it. So we can also use our favorites. Now our reading pane, you'll see is right now it's set to the right. That's the one I'm using. You'll see it's kind of highlighted there. Hopefully you can see that. See that right there? I'm going to move it down to the bottom, which is another common place that people have it. And you'll see now my emails stretch across, or my email list is horizontal, and my reading pane is horizontal on the bottom. With the way monitors are these days, with them being wider now, I actually prefer to keep it on the right. And you'll see you can also just turn it off completely. That's another option. I'm going to leave it on the right for me. Again, these are all things that I want you to know where they are so that you can set your screen up in a way that's best for you. And then my to-do bar, which right now is minimized, and if I click on normal, you'll see it opens up on the right. And my to-do bar gives me a full month calendar, it gives me my appointments, and it gives me my tasks. This completes my screen, especially if I am fully utilizing my calendar and my tasks. And you'll see here I can also minimize that, which again just gives me the arrow to be able to open it and close it. And then I also have the ability to turn it off. And here are the different items I can take off. Let me make that normal now so you see it. And then I can also click here to Date Navigator, and it just turns the calendar off. Or I could tell it to turn off my appointment. So I have control as to what is shown inside that to-do navigation. And then we've got our people pane, which you'll see is set to normal. And what that is that's on the bottom here. And you'll see if I click on, I'm just going to look for somebody here. You'll see right in here, it tells you who the person is, if they've got Facebook, if they've got different things like that, it'll show up in there. I generally have it turned off. I don't know why it was on. I think I was testing, but I generally have that off. But if you really are working with people who are Facebook and Twitter and all those kinds of things, that's what will show up down here at the bottom. And you'll see here, it's a little clearer if when I open the message up what's down here in the people section. Okay, the next thing I want to show here, though, is real quick, I have my arrangement here. You'll see it's arranged by date. In other words, I have my email sorted by date. I can quickly click on any of these. I can rearrange it from, to, the size of the email, subject type. So this is really great because if I wanted to now sort my email, and let me just get rid of my to-do bar so we have a little bit more space here. And I want to stretch this out. So I just want to rearrange it so you can see. Now when I click from, see right now it's today, it's yesterday, it's Thursday, and when I click on from, now it's going to sort it based on who it's from. 1-800 contacts, admin support. You see now it's broken down by who. And again, I can keep going on that, and I can change it to who it's sent to. Who is this sent to? And size, subject, type. You get the hint. There's a whole bunch of them in here that are all set up for you automatically. And I'm going to go back to date. And now the other thing in here that I want to take a look at with the views is the ability to change columns. This is a very important or a really nice feature. And again, I'm going to turn off my reading pane now so that we can really see this better. So this is my email listing. And you'll see I have the from column, the subject column, and you know, I see as I'm clicking on them, it's resorting it based on that. All right, but I could add columns in here. And if I just simply point to subject and do a right mouse click, you'll see I get field chooser. So I can actually choose an additional field that I want to put in. And let's say, for instance, I'm using categories, which we will talk about a little bit later. If I click on categories and click new, if I double click on categories, edit. So if I click, hold, drag, and you'll see now I have categories moving with me. And when I point to my chart up here, I can release, and you'll see, let me close my field picker, and you'll see now my category column is now on my listing. So if I move this down a little bit, I can expand my categories, and if I start to use categories, I can see what category each email is set to. All right, so that's how we can modify our view. And there's a bunch of other options in here that I would encourage you to play around with. You have reverse sort, adding columns, which is what we just did. This is another way to get to it. And also the ability to expand and collapse your groupings. The other thing I want to show you in here, actually, before we move on, is show as conversations. Conversations, otherwise known as threads, is important because I'm going to show you a little bit later when we talking about deleting emails. This is important. I like this, especially at work when I do show as conversations. When I click on this, it will sort, and I'm going to say this folder only for now. And what it does is it groups my emails based on conversations. So if I've had a lot of give and take, you'll see here there's a email right here. It says hi. And I want you to see where all these other emails, there's nothing on the right. Yet this one, see there's a white arrow, and this one has a white arrow. That means there's a conversation, meaning there is a thread of emails. And the way the system does it is based on the subject field, which really means I want you to be careful, because if you have the same subject, it will group together emails that may or may not be the same conversation. So be aware, it really is doing this based on the subject field. And then based on the reply, the email, then the reply to the reply, it groups them all that way. And now when I click on this white arrow, you'll see it opens up and it shows me her original email, my response, and then her follow-up email. And that's what we're talking about with a conversation. It's a thread of emails. And the same thing with this one here. You'll see the original email and then a follow-up email to that one. Now what I'd like to move on to now is setting up, as we talked about just a little while ago, setting up a reminder. So if I have an email here, for instance, this email study cluster, if I do a right mouse click, I can select follow-up and flag this message for a follow-up. And you'll see all the way to the right-hand side here, it has now turned the flag red. Now there's a reason why your Outlook is going to be a little bit different than mine. And let me go back to my Home tab, and you'll see here's the other place that I can find that follow-up flag. And when I click on the down arrow, you'll see it just says clear the flag or flag the message. In your Outlook, if you're using an Exchange server behind it, you will not only get the option to follow up, but you will also get a reminder option. Follow up today, follow up tomorrow, follow up next week, and then a custom follow up. When do you want to follow up? That gives you that reminder. So you can move this email into a folder, or you can leave it in your inbox, but on that specific date, it will remind you that that email needs to be actioned. The reason I don't see it is because I'm using Outlook and using Google behind it. It's my Google account is being delivered to Outlook. And because it's an IMAP client, it does not use the follow-up reminders. The next thing I can do is I can take that exact same email, I'm going to click and hold on it, and you'll see now I'm dragging it, and I could file it away, as I talked about earlier. I can come over here and file it away and put it into a folder. And as I highlight the folder, if I release my mouse, it would put it there. The other thing I can do, though, is if I come all the way down here to my icons for my different sections, here's my to-do. If I point to my to-do item, you'll see how the to-do item right here. If I have my mouse dragged over, highlighted that, when I release my mouse click, it's going to open up a window to allow me to create a task based on that email. Notice, all the details of my email are in here. So it's taken that email, put it inside a task, and now I have the ability, here's my subject of my task or the name, I have my start date, I have my due date, I have my status. So I'm creating a task from that email. Going back to the concept of defer it. So I'm going to go ahead and save and close that, and you'll see now if I click on my tasks, that task is now in here. You'll see this icon here. Notice the email. That's the follow-up. That's the flag I put on for a follow-up. This one here is the task I created. So it's basically very similar. Doing each of those is very similar, but they have a different designation inside your task list. But in the end, you have basically done the same thing, whether you do a follow-up or you create a task from it. The difference is if I were to open this, it's just the email. If I were to open up the task, I have a lot more options as far as start date, due date, things of that nature. So that's how I can defer it. Now, one of the last things I want to do, we'll get into delegate it a little bit later when we get into the details of creating a task. So let's move on now from email and move on to working with our calendars. Calendar, tasks, and contacts. Let's get started with our calendar in this module. And we're going to come down here and click on my icon down here at the bottom so that I can select my calendar. And let's start taking a look at some of the tips we can go through in the calendar itself. You'll see I have a couple of test entries in here. And first off, let's make sure we see that our views are right here. We've got a day view, work week, week, month, and a schedule view. So you can play around with those. What I want to start out though is when I create a new appointment. And there's certain basics in here: subject, location. Most of us know all those things. We've got all the basics in here. The appointment, scheduling, invitees. We're going to talk about that in a second. Then over here we have, is it a recurrence? Do I want to have it recur multiple times? That's where you'd set that. If you want to change the time zone, here's your reminder. And here's your indication whether or not it should list it on your calendar as busy. Or you'll see there's other options where you can indicate that it's free, tentative, busy, or out of the office. So it's a little more descriptive as to not just an appointment, but also what is going on with that appointment. And to the right, which we will talk about a lot in our next module, is our tags, categorizing it. What I want to focus on right now is this concept in the middle here of scheduling and invitees. When I click on invite attendees, you'll see now it shows that it's coming from me, and you'll see who it's going to. This allows me to email out an appointment to others, and that way they can then accept that appointment, thus notifying me that they've accepted the appointment, and it automatically adds it into their calendar. Now this definitely works if everybody has Outlook, and it does work with most normal calendar and email systems like Google or Yahoo. Some are not compatible. The vast majority are. So the only major difference between over here where it says new appointment and new meeting is new meeting immediately assumes you're going to invite other people. So the new appointment gives me a basic appointment for myself. New meeting starts it out with the from, the to, and then of course the rest, the subject, location. And notice here on the bottom, and you'll see this when you invite people, you have this additional piece at the bottom here that will show you who's attending, who's accepted, who's tentative, who declined, and who has not responded. So it gives you a little bit of gives you a better view as to what's going on with that meeting. Have people joined us? Are they going to be there? The next thing I really want to take a look at with you is the fact that we can have multiple calendars. You'll see over here I have two individual calendars. One is checked, one is not. And you'll see that when I check that second calendar, you'll see now I have a side-by-side view of the two calendars. So I've got entries on the left in blue, and I've got entries on the right in green. Now if I want to see those on top of each other, I want to see them in one view, I simply need to click on this arrow right here, which will move the two and join them together. Not join the tasks. I'm not putting it all in one. I'm just overlaying one over the other. So watch what happens. When I click on this arrow, now I can see my blue entries on the same screen that I see my green entries. And you'll see here if I click on blue, the blue become highlighted, and if I click on the green get highlighted. So you see the tabs up top here, and then if I don't want that anymore and I want to split them, here's the arrow pointing the other direction where I can split them back out to the way they were before, and they're two separate. I can also have them joined and just uncheck it over here on the left hand side, and it goes away. So that's a very important thing. It's a great feature. It is a phenomenal feature. I use that tremendously when I have multiple calendars. Now the one last thing I want to jump into with calendar, I want to show here open calendar, because some of us have internet calendars. So we have our work calendar, and then we have a Google or a Yahoo calendar. All I need to do is go to that calendar, get its URL, okay? And once I do that, I go from internet and I paste my URL right here, and I can open up and see my calendars all together in one view. And again, I can use the check marks on the left to show and not show those calendars side by side or overlaid. All right, now let's move on to tasks. Okay, so we're going to jump over people for a second, because in our little grouping down here, you'll see here's our contacts, here are our tasks. Tasks go kind of hand in hand with the calendar, and I say that because you'll see right on this view here, right on the bottom, it actually shows my tasks, because our tasks generally have start dates, end dates, those types of things. So I'm going to jump right over to tasks. And the task system in Outlook is fairly basic. It is not a project management system, but it is a great, solid, to-do task management system. and you'll see we have the entries that we had put in earlier. Now my view here, keep in mind again, we've got a bunch of different views at our disposal. Detailed, simple, to do, and if I click on this arrow here, it'll show me even more. So I'm going to stick with the detailed view list, which shows me my subject, status, due date. And again, remember, just like with email, I can change this view by going right click up here and doing a field chooser, remove column, any of these options inside of here. What I want to take a look at though is when I do a new task, you'll see I basically get a subject, start date, due date, those types of things, all the normal stuff. Alright, what I do want to look at here though is you've got another option here called details, and that allows us to go a little bit further and we can enter in the total work, the actual work, mileage, and billing information. Just a few more pieces of information for us to be a little bit more detailed about what's going on with our task. The major thing that I really want to get to on this though is right here, assign task. As we talked about earlier, we want to delegate. We're delegating something out. When I click on assign task, again, I get an email option to add in who am I sending this to. So I can then send this task to somebody, and if you notice right here, I have a couple of check marks that have been added as well. And the first one is keep an updated copy of this task on my task list. So my personal task list will have this task that I've assigned to somebody else. And then the second one here is send me a status report when it's completed, meaning whoever I've given it to, once they complete it, send me a report that they've completed it. So this goes back to what I mentioned earlier about keeping yourself up to date. Rather than email it over to them and then have to put a reminder for you to go check with them to find out whether it's done, not done, those types of things. If you use this, now you can more really forget about it because it's in your to-do list, and every once in a while you'll review your to-do list and you'll see it sitting there and it will remind you that you need to check up with that person. But when that person completes it, you don't need to go ask. You don't need them to send you a special email. As soon as they mark it complete, it will automatically notify you that it's been marked complete. And again, keep in mind we've got the ability to set up recurring tasks, just like we have recurring appointments. And then we're going to get into these tags in our next module. And just a few quick last things. I'm going to say no on that. Just a few quick last things. Notice how quick and easy it is up here to mark it complete, remove it from the list, specify a follow-up for a specific date or time. So that's the majority, and that's the key stuff that we wanted to go through with our tasks. Now let's take a look at our contacts, our address book. And again, this one is relatively simple. We do a new contact. We have all the basics in here that we would anticipate. We now have the ability to add in a picture if we wanted to pick a picture and put it on, associate it with somebody's card. And you've got the ability to do all the basics here. Full name, emails, and those kinds of things. What I really want to show you related to this, again, just a reminder, we have our different views that we can look at. What I want to talk about here, though, is a contact group. This is something a lot of people are not aware of. In the contact group, I have the ability to set up a group, just like you have groups usually at work where you'll have an IT group or an HR group. And if you pick that and you send an email to that group, it sends it to everybody in that list. Well, this is how we create one for ourselves in our own Outlook. And you'll see here, all I got to do is start typing in a name. So I'm going to name my group. And then I can click on Add Members. And I can add them from my Outlook contacts, from my address book, or from just a new email contact. So if I click on New Email Contact, I can type in just, okay, this is going to be Michael. And the email address is michael@sabelli.org, and I click OK, and now that's added to my list. And I can continue to do that until I have all my members in here, and then I can save and close. It becomes something I can send an email to, and if I use that group and I send it to an email to that person, to that group, you'll see there it is. Then I can select that. So let's select the group, and we'll click on email. And you'll see it says here I'm sending it to the test group. Notice the little plus sign. Once you click on that plus sign, it will expand out all the names of the individuals in that group. Once you do it, you can't roll it back up. And it'll tell you that. When I click on the plus, it says if you expand the list, it will replace with the members. You will not be able to collapse it again. Just click OK, and really all it does is add into the to field all the different contacts. Now remember, when you're doing this, if you're sending email to a large list of people and you don't want people to see who else is on the list, don't use the to or the CCC field. You want to click on either one of those and you'll get the ability to use the BCC field. And that's if you're sending an email to a large group of people and you don't want everybody to see everybody else's email, always use the BCC. And of course, we have some other quick items up here. You have the ability to attach files, attach items, signature. The one I want to mention here is the attach items. You can attach an Outlook item to an email. In other words, I can attach anything that's in my Outlook system. Emails, calendar items, contacts, journal entries, all of these are available for me to select and send as an attachment with that email. Edit that out. Okay, one last thing I want to show here in contacts is mail merge. I wish I could tell you we had enough time to go through the mail merge in detail, but I don't. But I want you to know it's there. It's no longer where you have to go to it's no longer where you have to use Word to then pull a list in and do a full mail merge. You can now do it directly from Outlook. And this will give you the ability to walk through the procedure to select. You'll see here contacts, all the contacts in the current view, only selected contacts. Then you can specify your document file, and then you can specify the other information, and it will do a mail merge and email it out for you. Now, when it said here, though, all contacts in my current view, in our next module, we're going to get into filtering. How do we narrow down my view, whether it be email, calendar, contacts, tasks? How do I filter my information down so that I can find what I'm looking for? So let's move on to the next module. Module 4, finding stuff. So now let's talk about how we can find stuff in our email boxes, in our folders, in our calendar, our contacts, our tasks. How are we going to find stuff? Now, we've already talked about some of the things we need to do to be proactive about finding stuff. Because finding stuff is not just about being reactive, about now, I need to find an email, I need to go ahead and find an email. It's not just about being reactive and saying, I got to go find something in the mountain of emails that I have. It's also about being proactive. What can I do up front so that later on when I have to find something, I can find it, and I can find it easier. So what we're talking about here is indicating or marking some of our emails, or all, depending on who you are and how you like to do it, but marking them so that you can find them better later. And what I'm referring to here is one of the things we talked about earlier is follow-ups, the follow-up flag. Well, that's in this grouping on your ribbon called tags. And different variation of tags are available in email, calendar, contacts, and tasks. Categories is always there. It's on everything. Let's refresh our memory on one of the ones we've already spoken about, which is the follow-up. And we already talked about how you can put a flag on an email so that you can follow up on that email later. And you see here, if I click on this, not only can I add now a specific flag with no date, which is what I was able to do before, but I can also now, you'll see when I click on this, I can set the reminder as well. The follow-up today, tomorrow, this week, next week, no date, custom date, add a reminder, mark it complete, so I have a lot more options now. So that is one of our options to be proactive, because this isn't just about finding it. This is about the fact that I need to remind myself that I need to take care of that later. But again, when later comes and I need to find it, this is one of the ways I can use to find it. The other option here usually works out by default is the unread red tag. That happens automatically. If I were to come here for this email, notice these are all in bold and the ones earlier are not. That's the difference between a read and unread email in my email box. And as soon as I double click on this and open it up to read it, when I close it back down, you'll notice now that is not bold anymore. So the system has now flagged that from an unread email to a read email. And I can do that manually just by pointing to it here, click on unread red, and it automatically changes it from one tag to the other. Keep in mind as well, if you have the read pane open, it will mark it as read as soon as it's displayed in the read pane. Now, the last thing that I want to talk about in this section is the categorize. Now, categorize is, like I mentioned already, is available throughout all the different areas. Email, calendar, contacts, tasks, notes, all these different pieces are available with category. So let's take a look at what category means. I've already done one here, and you'll notice because earlier, if you remember in my earlier modules, I added in the column for categories. And you'll see I have an email here that's already in the blue category. So I'm going to grab these emails here, and I'm going to say, you know what, I want to flag that and pick my category. Now, when we start working with categories, they all start with a blue, a green, an orange, purple, red, and yellow category. That is there by default. And you'll see that the first time I select it, let's take the green one for example, the system is going to tell me this is the first time you have used the green category. Do you want to rename it? And now I can change that to, I'll call it support emails. So I'm flagging that this is a support type email. And I can leave the color or not. And now I can pick a shortcut. Notice here, Control F2, F3. That means when I'm in my email box, I'm going to select Control F2, and I'm going to say yes. And you notice over here on the right, now it has a green flag, and it says support emails. Now I'm going to highlight all of these emails here, hold down Control and press F2, and you'll notice all of those are now automatically categorized as support emails. And the whole point to this is we have folders. Remember we talked earlier about folders, so I can put things away in folders. I can flag them for follow-up. I can mark them read and unread, and now I can even say they are specifically a category of email. And this helps because now as I file things away in folders, I can say even though this email is going into a vendor folder, I can indicate that is a support email for that vendor. So that later on when it comes time to filter, which is where we're headed, which is how to then filter and find the emails, I can use the categories along with the folders, along with the flags, along with the read and unread in order for me to narrow down and find the emails that I'm looking for. So again, so we're clear, proactively, we set up folders and file it away. We flag them for follow-up so we can find them later. We mark them read and unread, and we categorize them. So now let's take a look at how we can apply a filter to narrow down an email box that may have thousands of emails to just a select few. And that is in that grouping right next to tags, and it's the grouping called find. And what that is designed for is exactly what we're talking about, finding stuff. And when I click on find email, and I click this drop down here, it gives me a number of shortcuts. First one is unread. So one of the most common things is just show me the emails I haven't read yet. And if I just simply click on that, you'll notice that all my emails below now are all bolded because they are all unread emails. But also notice my ribbon has changed. And you'll see that I got a new grouping called Search Tools and a tab called Search. And you see this here from subject, attachments, category. Unread is bolded, which means it's selected. And then I have sent to, this week, flagged, important, and then more, which is going to give me more search options. We'll get there in a few minutes. But that is what you now have available to you, is a lot more than what was just in your original ribbon. Now, for now, I'm just going to close that because I want to go through some of the shortcuts that they have here so that we take a look at them all. So this one here would filter out anything that has an attachment. So if it has an attachment, I see it. If it doesn't, I get rid of it. Not rid of it. You don't throw it away. It just filters it out. So we have here attachment. You see here you can specify just emails today, yesterday, this week, this month, last month. You have all those options. And then here's my categories. And again, blue, and here's where I've changed it to support emails and all my other categories. Or I can say give me every email that has any category or no category. And then flagged, important, sent to me or CC'd me. And then we've got our more filters. So those are all shortcuts, and I encourage you to play around with those. But I also encourage you to play around in here, which is I'm going to select more filters. And what that's going to do is rather than apply one of these shortcut filters, it's just going to open up the search tools and my ribbon and my tab for all my search options. And now I can click on from, and you'll notice right here on the right, it says from : and it's already highlighted, and I can say here, show me everything from PM study. And you'll see now it filters it down to just anything where the from is PM study. And I can do the same with subject. And you'll notice as I did that, let me do that again. I want to make sure this is nice and clear. So we have from PM study. Notice that's right here. This is where I was typing in. And watch what's going to happen though. Watch over here, and I'll zoom in a minute. When I click on subject, it adds it to that line. You see here, it's now from and subject. So let's put in the subject, and I'm going to put in the word Michael. And what it should do is narrow it down now, looking for anything with the word PM study and from, and anything with that has a subject of Michael. And that's why I am now down to just one email. And I can keep going. I can add in has attachment. And you notice now I have nothing, because there is no PM study with the subject line of Michael that has an attachment to it. So you see how I can group these all together. Again, this is sort of a shortcut way. The first level of shortcuts is here, where I can only pick one or the other. Then I can go in here and I can pick multiple of these items. And then I can go even further. And I can click on more, and here's even more of my options. But the furthest is when I come over here to search tools and I go to advanced find. And when I do that, now I get a box like this, and this allows me to do a lot more. But you notice there's not a lot of shortcuts here. This is where you kind of have to know what you're doing. And here's, I'm going to search for certain words, and I can put the words in this box here. And I can use the word PM study. But this is in the subject field. So no, I don't want that. I'm sorry. I don't want it from PM study. I want it with Michael. And then the from, see here, now it says from here. And that's where I'm going to put in PM study. And then I can specify who it was sent to. And then I have find now, and you'll see it shows me in this box below. It doesn't affect my inbox like it was before. Now it shows me below, this is the result set that you get. And I can keep going. I have this option of where I am, and it gives you a bunch of different options. The time, when it was received, sent, due, expires, created, modified. And then if I move on to more choices, I even have more in here. I can deal with categories and pick multiple categories. Okay, I don't want to start setting these all up. But I can pick multiple categories. I can say only items that are, only items with. So I have so much control in here. And then if I go all the way to advanced, now this is where I can specify individual fields. I have access to every field available inside of Outlook. And I can specify in that field mileage, which if you recall is in the in tasks. If I pick that and says, well, anything that has a mileage of 50. Now, I'm not going to find anything because I don't have any tasks in there with mileage. But I think you see my point, because then I can add this to list and keep going and continue to pick field upon field upon field until I get the search criteria that I am looking for, so that I can find all of my stuff. So again, if you really know what you're looking for, you can build these search criteria and get yourself all the way down to the 1 or 2 emails you are in fact looking for. But it starts with being proactive. The more you can do up front by putting it in specific folders, the more you can be proactive by putting a category on it, to using flags. All of that will help when you need to go find stuff so that you can find what you're looking for. And that is a synopsis of finding stuff. Module 5, automation. In this module, we're going to look at automating Outlook so it does things for us. There are 2 distinct ways that we can do automation in Outlook. One is quick steps, the other is rules. They essentially do the same thing. They both can move items to folders, they both can categorize, they both can run multiple action steps in what to do with your email, your calendar item, your task. The major difference is, or the key difference really, is the fact that quick steps is something you have to say, go ahead and run it. I have to click here and say, system, run this quick step right now on this email. Or I can use a shortcut key, but I'm highlighting an email and I'm saying, go ahead, run it now. I have to tell it to run that automation. In a rule, that's not true. The rules can be designed so that as soon as you receive an email, it checks some criteria. If that email matches the criteria I select, like if it's sent to me or if it has a specific word in the subject, go ahead and run this rule, run this automation. Same thing as a quick step though, it'll run steps. It could run it, throw it into a folder, categorize it, all those kinds of things. So quick step, I have to initiate. Rules happen automatically. I will caution you with rules though. Keep in mind, when it's automated and you're telling the system, read the email, figure it out on your own and do something with it, be very careful with that because you could lose emails, especially if you have them being filed away somewhere or if you have them deleted. It can be happening and you won't even know you're getting the email if you are not on top of your rules and you're not doing it in a way that is clear for you to be able to know what is happening and know how to get those emails if you need them. So let's jump right into quick steps. And you'll see quick steps is right here in the middle of our ribbon. It's a big grouping called quick steps. Bank email and support email, those are ones I've created. These others are automations or default items that are in there. So we're going to take a look at one of those first. So I'm going to highlight an email, which I really don't have to do because it has nothing to do with the email I have highlighted. But I'm going to click on Team Email. And when I click on that, you'll see it says first time setup. This is a quick step, opens up a new email and send it to specified people. Bottom line is, it's going to send an email out. So the name of it, I'm going to change the name of it to send email to staff. And you'll see here the action step is create a new message and it wants to know to send to who. So I'm going to send it to staff. And I'm going to click save. That's it. And you'll see now my quick step says send email to, and you can't see it all because it breaks up. Something for you to be aware of. So when I click on that, what do you think it's going to do? It's going to open up a new email and automatically address it. It really doesn't do a whole lot, does it? All it really does is open up a new email and automatically put in the staffing address. But that's not all it can do. We just set up a real simple one. I'm going to take that same email I just set up and I can point to it and you will right mouse click and click on Edit Send Email Staff. And you'll see here I get an open it up and now it says, well, here's my name, here's my action steps, new message, send to. But look right below that, Add Action. And when I click on Add Action, I get another box and I can click on here and look at all the different options I have. I can move it, copy it, delete it, mark it as read, mark it as unread. Now, some of these things are not things I would do with an email I'm sending out, but this is not just for the fact that I'm sending out an email. If this was in a new arrived email, I could tell it, move it to a folder, copy it to a folder. But here, look at the categorize. I can categorize the messages, clear the categories, flag them for follow-up. I can do all of these different things. And in this case, I'm going to categorize the message, and it's going to say, well, what category? I'm going to say I'll make it an orange category. So I can add additional actions beyond that, but we're going to leave it at that for now. I want you to see down here on the bottom, I have shortcut keys. Because right now, in order to run the action step, I'm going to click on that quick step, and it'll go off. I can also choose a shortcut key. Control Shift 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to select 5. And then this, tooltip text. And you see it already says create a new email to your team. I'm going to modify that just a little bit, just so you can see where this is going to show up. Create a new email to staff, and I'm going to put my initials just so you can see that it's stuff I typed in, and I'm going to click Save. Now, just so you know, when I point to send email to staff, notice right below it, and I can't zoom, I apologize, but right below it, you'll see it says send email to staff. Then in parentheses, Control Shift 5, which is my shortcut key. It's letting you know that you have a shortcut key assigned. And then below that is the text we typed in, create new email to staff MGC. And now when I click on this, I can send it out. And you'll see that I sent the email out, and now I have sent emails, and I can do that for a number of different items here. Here, reply and delete. That allows me to automatically reply, and as I type in my reply, when I hit send, it deletes the email. So I can set up quick steps. Now, if you want to set up one brand new, click this down arrow right here, right there. And you'll see you get the option of new quick step, manage quick steps. So if I want to manage the ones I already have, the other option is right there. You have create new. And when I select create new, it doesn't start with a predefined one that they had by default. It allows me to create one from scratch. And I can call it test, and I can pick every action I want to happen. Now again, this doesn't happen automatically. I'm going to set that as importance, and I'm just going to click Finish. And now if I click on an email, click on that, see how I have to initiate it? Rules can happen automatically. So let's move over to our rules, which is just to the right of Quick Steps. You'll see it right there called Rules. And the primary use of rules that I've seen is that as a new email comes in, if it matches certain criteria, I can move it to folders, I can categorize it, I can forward it to somebody, I can reply to it automatically, those kinds of things. So you'll see as I put it up, bring it up, as I open it up, the first thing it has is a couple of shortcuts. Always move a message from Peak 10 or always move a message to Michael. So that's a shortcut. One of the more common things to do, which is anytime I get an email from Peak 10, move it somewhere. And if I select that, you'll see it wants to know where do you want to move it to. So every time I get an email from Peak 10 support from now on, it would automatically move it into that folder. Let's go a little further and say, you know what, I want to create my own rule. And this is the kind of box I get. And again, it's still trying to make it easy for you. I have these check boxes here. Well, what do you want to do? Anytime it's from, if I want to deal with anytime it's from Peak 10, I can check that box. Or if the subject contains, or if it's sent to, I just check the box that I want to apply. And then here, do the following. Again, these are the more common things to be done. This one's interesting here. Display in a new item alert window. It gives you a pop-up, basically. If the email is important enough that you want to make sure that when it comes in, I get an email pop-up. That's what would happen. Now again, this is a bunch of shortcuts. This is helping you write rules so that you don't have to get into the advanced portion of it. But I want you to take a look at the advanced portion so that you understand how powerful this can be, and again, how dangerous. If these rules are in there and being applied, and I have been caught by this more than once, where I'll think I'm not getting emails, or I don't find an email, or I don't see an email. It's because it's getting caught up in a rule and getting filed away, and I never even noticed that it's gone. So let's click on Advanced Options, and you'll see here again, what condition do I want to check? So as an email arrives, I have all these options. Who it's from. Is it marked as high importance? Sent to. With this in the subject. You see it come down here. With any specified word in the body. I'm going to say that because I want you to see. See how this is highlighted? Specified word in the body is in blue. All I need to do then is I click on that, and it's going to ask me, okay, what words? So I can actually put in test, add to list. And I can put in skip and add to list. So it's now going to look for any of those words in the subject. So it's not just one word, it's any one of those words. And I've got a whole bunch of other options here with specific sizes, attachments, automatic replies. All of these are there's a lot of options in here. So then I can say, okay, yeah, I didn't actually save my words. I'm going to put the word test in here, save that, click OK. And then when I click next, it says, okay, what do I do with it? So now my criteria is, when you find a message with the word test in the body, well, what do you want me to do with it now, Michael? And you'll see here, move it, assign it, delete it, permanently delete it, move a copy to, forward it. All of these different options is things I can do, including start an application. If I happen to get an email with the word test in it, you know what? Start up Excel. Why? I don't know. But that's what it can do. It can run a script. Again, these can be powerful, but they also can be very dangerous because they're going to start doing things automatically. And here's perform a custom action, display a specific message in an alert window. And again, I can say, hey, new test email. And I click OK. And now I click next. And then, is there an exception? See, now I say, if you get an email with the word test in the subject, I want you to pop up an alert window. Well, was there an exception? Do you not want me to do that if certain happens? And you'll see here, except if it's from a specific person, except if it comes through a certain account, except. You have all these different possible exceptions to that you can apply. And now I give it a name. And we will call it test. And you'll see setup rule options. Run this rule now on the messages already in the inbox. It's unchecked by default because if I click finish right now, it means only new emails coming in will be put through this criteria. If I check this, it will now run this rule against everything I already have in my inbox. So be aware that you might not want to do that, or you may want to do that. It helps you automate. If you set up a rule and you've got 1,000 emails in your mailbox, it'll go through all 1,000 emails and it will file them away if you have a rule that applies to them. And the other option here is turn the rule on, because these rules can be turned on and turned off. I'm going to say turn it on, and I'm going to click finish. Now, nothing happens until an email comes in. And when an email comes in, then it will run and evaluate the rule. Now let's go back to our rules section here, and just under create rule, which is where we were before, we want to manage rules and alerts. So we're going to select that one because I want to show you here you have check marks, and there's that rule test, and there's a check mark next to it. When I uncheck it, it is now not running. It will not run. It's not enabled. So now if an email comes in with that unchecked and I apply it, that rule will not apply. It will not evaluate that rule. So that's how we can turn rules on and off as we need them. Notice also here, this is not just email rules. You have the ability to manage alerts. And alerts is a whole nother section that I unfortunately don't have time to get into. But it's something you may want to take a look at. All right, thank you very much. Let's move on. So let's take a recap at what we've covered today. In Module 1, we covered the 4 Ds of organization. Either do it or dump it. And as we talked about, when we say dump it, we don't mean just throw it away. We mean move it into a delete folder or move it into other folders, but get it out of your inbox so that you can keep your inbox clear, so that you can stay organized. So dump it means dump it in the garbage or dump it in a folder. We can also defer it. And when we defer something, we're looking to take care of it later. But we want to make sure that we don't forget to take care of it later, so we looked at things like using a follow-up, creating a task, or creating a calendar appointment from one of those items that we want to defer. And our other option was to delegate it. And we looked at a couple of ways to delegate it, which is simply to send an email off to someone and say, please take care of this. The other option is to create a task from it and delegate that task to them. So that way, when they update their task, when they close that task, you get notified. So we looked at the four different D's of organization and then how we can utilize Outlook to achieve them. And then in Module 2, we looked at our email section. How do we take care of our emails? What features are available to us in Outlook to help us deal with our emails, like different views, the different panes we can turn on and off, adding and removing columns, turning on conversations, using folders, dragging and dropping items into those folders. So we looked at a number of different ways or a number of different features in email, in Outlook's email section to help us get organized. And then in Module 3, we took a look at calendars, tasks, and contacts. The difference between an appointment and a meeting, which is simply inviting others to that appointment, which turns it into a meeting. How can we manage our calendars? How can we look at an internet-based calendar? We took a look at how to share different things. We took a look at how to create a task and the different details available to us in that task for us to store in there. We also looked at our contacts. And then in Module 4, we took a look at finding stuff. How can we proactively deal with items early so that it's easier to find it later? And we talked about things like filing it away in folders. We talked about categorizing items. We talked about using the read and unread flag. And then we talked about the different ways that we can use shortcuts and full-featured searching in order to find those items that we're looking for. And then finally, in our last module, we took a look at automation. So we looked at quick steps. How to create a quick step that has multiple action items in it. So if I click on a quick step, it'll run a number of different steps so that I don't have to do them all one by one each and every time I need to action an item on that. The other thing we looked at was rules. And we looked at creating those automated rules so that we don't even have to kick off a quick step. The system automatically determines whether or not that email applies to the rule, and if it does, then apply the action items associated with that rule. It looks like we're reaching the top of the hour, and that's all the time we have for today. I appreciate your time, and thank you so much for participating. This concludes our special Career Track webinar. For more information about the many training resources we offer, to request your copy of our latest catalog, or to receive a schedule of our current seminars in your area, please call 1-800-556-3009 or visit our website at www.careertrack.com.